Good morning. It's good to see you today. Thank you so much for being here. It is my joy to have you here and also to welcome those of you watching around the country. Thanks for tuning in to Suncoast Online. Let me remind you of some things that are in your hand. You see this little packet of things. There's an orange card that has some information. There's also about sign up for Summer Serve, and you see what's happening on the back of the sermon notes. And some of the things that are happening on the back of the sermon notes, I'm not going to read all those for you, except to remind you of a few things. One is that there's the Suncoast tour is there and the other things, but I want to remind you about the oil change that's happening this coming Saturday. If you've never been a part of the oil change, it's something we give back to the community. Every month, the last Saturday of the month, we do a free oil change, car wash, and vacuum for people's cars. We do about 20 to 30 per weekend. So if you know anybody who needs that, could be blessed by an oil change, please let them know. And if you want to come out, some of the guys come out and help us from 8 o'clock till 12 o'clock. It's a lot of fun, and guys have good camaraderie as well. The other thing I'd mention to you that's not on there is the Israel trip is coming, and that's in January. If you've never been to Israel and you'd like to go to Israel, some of you looked at it and you've been thinking about it. Some of you are a little nervous about the world events. You watch the media. Let me suggest you turn it off, because it is not. I've been there for 5 times, and I've been in crisis mode only from the media. When you go there, it's a safe place to go. You really feel comfortable. Never felt threatened at all. So for those of you who are considering it, please don't let the media frighten you out of that, because it is worth a trip. So that's in January, and that's a game changer as well. Today, we're in the series called Stop It. And it really is about stopping some things in our life. You know, we've been looking at readjusting some areas. Let me suggest, when someone tells you to stop it, does anybody here really ever like that? Boy, I don't. The only person I like to hear stop it from is me. When I do something and I realize I need to stop it, then it's okay for me to hear in my head, you need to stop that. And that's what this teaching is about, is not you saying stop it to someone else, but you allowing yourself to correct some areas of your life that maybe need to cease. To quit sometimes seems impossible. Sometimes we need help, and that's what we're looking for in this series. So let me suggest this first statement, and this is an important statement. God can so fill us with His character that we finally stop responding with inappropriate behavior and attitudes, those things that are really not who we are. Let me say it one more time. God can so fill us with His character that we can finally stop responding with the inappropriate behaviors and attitudes, those things that are not who we really are. I want to be the best version of me I can. I think you do too. Choosing to stop it is about having the strength and the boldness to make choices that align with the truth. Choosing and stopping go hand in hand. Following the teachings of Jesus and following His examples of love to live a God-filled life, we can stop doing those things that damage our lives and possibly those around us. We've been in this for several weeks. The first week, I mentioned to you about what we need to stop is simply stop worrying about what other people think. Quit trying to live your life according to someone else's expectations. If you try to live your life according to 10 people's expectations, you'll be living 10 different lives. And you can't do that. So what life should you live? The life that you're destined to live, the life that's yours. Be the best version of you. The second week we talked about quit pretending. Quit pretending to be someone else. Let Christ, again, live in you. The third week, Pastor Kevin talked to us about quit ignoring that which is obvious to others. And he did that very well. And last week, Brett talked about anger. How that we need to quit overlooking anger. There's good anger and not so good anger. Today we're going to look at a story that I've mentioned before not too long ago. But I'm going back to the story because it's a great truth. It's in John 21, and it sheds some light on this area of our life. So instead of reading the story, let me just tell you the story. In John 21 is where we'll culminate. But here's the story. Jesus had just had the Last Supper with His disciples. He just told Judas, you're going to betray me. He just looked at Peter and said, you're going to deny me. And he goes into the garden where he has the prayer time. They can't stay awake. And then after that, he's arrested. And after he's arrested, he's crucified, he's buried, he's resurrected, he's appearing to disciples in some fashion we don't know. It seems like he pops in and out on the scene behind locked doors on the road to Emmaus. We've seen Jesus come about in a variety of ways. He told Mary to tell the disciples and Peter that he was headed back to Galilee. And they go back to Galilee. They're looking for Jesus. Peter, James, and John, all fishermen. They go back home to where they'd grown up, the Sea of Galilee. And if you go to Israel, you'll see that. You'll take a boat ride on it. But when they go there, they go decide to finally go fishing. Why? Because they are frustrated at doing nothing. They are not very patient, just like some of us we've talked about today. We're impatient with the circumstances of our life. I just want it to get better, the way it should be. I want to see Jesus. He told us he'd meet us here. Where is he? Finally, Peter says, I don't know about you guys. I'm tired of sitting around. Let's go fishing. So he goes fishing. The other guy said, we'll go with you. So go on the Sea of Galilee. They're fish all night. They're fishermen. They know what they're doing. They know where to go. They know how to fish. These are professional fishermen. Early morning the next day, they get up close near the shore, and there's a guy standing on the beach. And he yells out to them, hey, guys, you caught anything? And they said, nah, we fished all night. We've got nothing. And if you'd fished all night and you're a professional fisherman, and there's a guy standing on the shore, doesn't even have a boat. He says, hey, how about throwing your nets on the other side of the boat? Duh. You think we haven't tried that before? You think we just started this as our first time to fish? But they throw their nets on the other side of the boat, and they catch 153 fish, a net full of fish. They haul it in. It's amazing. And then all of a sudden, one of the guys, I think it was John, said, look, I think it's Jesus on the shore. And Simon Peter had been longing to speak to Jesus. He does what Simon Peter does. He's a little bit of ADHD, according to my understanding. He simply jumps overboard. Guys, I got to tell you, that's probably not the best course of action for you to take. But he swims to shore, and he jumps out, and you can almost see him. He's in a frantic. I've been waiting to see Jesus. He runs up to Jesus, and Jesus is by the fire. Simon comes running up, and he's all excited, and Jesus is probably looking down at the fish, a little fire. He looks up at Simon Peter and goes, where's the fish? Oh! He goes running all the way back, helps them haul the nets in, brings the fish. Can you see this picture, this story? And finally brings them up to Jesus, and they have some food. And then Jesus kind of looks at Simon Peter and says, well, we take a walk just down the beach a little ways. He says, okay. And while they're walking along, Jesus looks at Simon Peter and says, Simon, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know I love you. He said, feed my lambs. In other words, don't fish. He asked him again, Simon, do you really love me? He says, Lord, you know I love you. I just said that. He said, then feed my sheep. He looks at him a third time. He said, Simon, do you really love me? And Simon was kind of had his feelings hurt at this point. He said, Lord, you know all things. You know I love you. I do love you. He said, then feed my sheep. But Peter, I need for you to focus. You know, you're the guy that jumps overboard without thinking. I need for you to focus. Follow me. What he really meant was, I've been with you for 3 years, and I've showed you how to live your life full of Jesus. I've showed you what the system gives and what this anti-system does. This spirit of Jesus can be, this spirit of love and grace. Follow these teachings, and your life will go so much better. And then Peter, being Peter, he goes, okay, I get it. He's a little antsy. He looks around, and John's been waiting to talk to Jesus. I just following along. He goes, well, what about him? And Jesus said, I'm going to have to, there's a loose translation. For crying out loud, Peter. Didn't we just have this whole conversation? It doesn't matter. Hear me, look at me, focus. Don't worry about him. My relationship with John has nothing to do with our conversation. You just need to follow the teachings that I've taught you. Today I want to challenge you to be one who follows Jesus. I do. It's my life goal is to follow the teachings of Jesus, and because when I've done that, it's transformed the way I live my life. So I'm going to give you 2 points today, and then 9 subpoints. Whew. Yeah, you see all those blanks on your sermon? If you can write, you'll like this. If you can't, doesn't matter. But if you walk away from this with 2 or 3 of the points I gave you, done the subpoints, that'll be good. Just 2 or 3, and I'm happy with that. As a teacher, that's 3 out of 9. That'd be a failing grade, but I'm okay. Here's the first thing. With God's help, I will quit comparing myself to others. Today, I quit comparing myself with others. When I compare myself with others, I fall into a trap. It's better for us to quit comparisons. See, what God wants to do in my life is personal. When I keep saying, what about him or what about her, I lose some of the possibilities. When we compare ourselves to others, 2 potential things happen. First of all, if I compare myself to you, I say, well, I'm better than you, then pride sets up. And I go, I compare myself to you, and you're better than me, then I'm envious. Why do they have such a great job and I don't? Why do they have more than me? Why are they better off than I am? What we're really saying is, what about him or her? See, when we say, what about them? We take the light of improvement that God has for us, that he's shining on us, and we deflect it on someone else. See, I think that's important. There's so many times that God wants to work in my life, and if I'm continually looking to someone else, then all of a sudden the work never really gets done in here because I'm deflecting it somewhere else. So, which leads me to the second truth of the day. Folks, we're going to fly through these. I got 9 more to go. Well, this is 2, and this is then 9 subpoints. With God's help, I will let him provide me with the tools I need for personal freedom. That's the 9 tools I'm going to give you. 9 items in your kit. Like I said, you may not remember all 9, but if you remember some, it'll help you. These items are part of the teachings of Jesus, and they'll help you on your spiritual journey and your spiritual formation. So here's the first one. I call it the fence of separateness, or you can write down boundaries is okay. But a section of fence. You know what they say about fences? Good fences make good neighbors, right? And why do we say that? It's not so we can keep our neighbors out. Maybe. But that's not the intent behind it. What it really means is it lets you know where your boundary is. So your neighbor's not mowing your grass, you're not mowing their grass. It simply let you know this is where my yard ends and your yard begins. So sometimes good fences make good neighbors, but volumes have been written about boundaries. And this fence represents a boundary. In the Old Testament, one of the 10 commandments is, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. In other words, if you misuse the name of God, you're going to be zapped. It's not a good thing. Jewish rabbis would not speak the personal name of God because they were afraid if they might misuse it. Now, I'm going to be bold enough to just let you know what the personal name of God is. Ready? It's called the Tetragrammaton. Doesn't your heart sing? Not really. I don't even know what you're talking about. Tetragrammaton. Tetra means 4. It really is 4 letters, and it's YHVH. And the name for God in the Hebrew is Yahweh. And they would not say the name of God. As a matter of fact, the rabbis, the scribes, when they would read the Old Testament, they would not say it. Every time they would come to the word Yahweh, they would use another word, Adonai. Adonai means the Lord. So they wouldn't say God, they'd just say the Lord, the Lord. And Adonai was the word they'd say because they did not want to misuse the name of God, so we'll never speak the name of God. See how that works? So most people, they knew it, but they'd never speak it. And really what's amazing is later they decided to make sure that a scribe didn't accidentally read it and forget that and say Yahweh because of reading fast. They would put the vowel points, which are just dots like periods underneath the letters. They put the vowel points underneath Yahweh, but the vowel points for Adonai. So when you're reading it, you read the vowel points. Oh, this doesn't make sense. Oh, I remember it's Adonai. There's the vowel points. We come along later. We don't have the Jewish history, and we read it literally, and we get to that. And you know what the Hebrew says when you read it with the Yahweh with the vowel points of Adonai? Jehovah. So I've heard people throughout the time singing Jehovah Jireh and Jehovah this and Jehovah that, and I go, oh boy, that's just a screw up. They don't know what they're reading because they don't know the history. And here's the thing, but they're not saying the wrong name. You could say Jehovah and misuse the name Jehovah, and maybe you're going to be okay. But if you misuse the name of Adonai, you're going to be okay. But if you misuse the name of Yahweh, it gets very personal. And at some point, you got to realize that's not the point at all. It's about blasting. It's about things that should not do. But what we do, we build boundaries. We put fences around it to keep things out. Boundaries protect us in so many ways. They're boundaries for children. You know, in my family, we have the parking lot rule. You know what the parking lot rule is? You can't walk in the parking lot if you're one of our kids or grandkids. Now, our children now are adults. They move beyond this, but you have to hold hands. It gets a little awkward when Ryan's 31 years old and I hold his hand to walk across the parking lot. But with children, when they're little, the parking lot rule is we hold hands, but I don't hold their hand. I grab their wrist. I don't let them sneak out because in a parking lot, in just a few steps, something tragic could happen to your kids. People drive too fast in parking lots. just all the things that could happen. And even last night I went out with someone and I heard this parent say to their grandchildren, the parking lot rule, and grab their grandkids' hands. It's part of the protection. But they're boundaries. We don't let our children run through parking lots because cars could be there. We don't let them play in the streets because of the damage that could happen. These are boundaries for kids. They're boundaries. We also say, I will not allow you to speak that way. It's disrespectful. Fences are limits, guidelines, boundaries. You know that children, they need boundaries. They don't need a parent to give them everything they want. If your kid gets everything they want and you just say yes to them all the time, guess what? We don't want to be around your kids because it's not good for them. Children need to know their boundaries, and they'll live up to the boundaries, but they need those. They need guidelines and limits. But adults need limits, guidelines, and boundaries too. There should be boundaries on sexual behavior. Build a fence. Stay away from the temptation. I've been a pastor now for many years, and I have pastor friends who've not put boundaries between themselves and some lady they're counseling. And all of a sudden in this counseling intimacy, something crazy happens, and there's no fence. They walk along the edge of the cliff, and then they slip and fall, and they wonder, how did this happen? I'll tell you how it happened. You played with fire and you got burned. You walked along the edge. The appropriate thing is build a fence. Keep the door open. Make sure someone's there. Do the proper etiquette. And there's certain flags that come up in counseling. But stay on this side of the fence. I've never almost slipped off that edge because I never get near that edge. I've built this boundary there. I'm like the Jewish scribe. I'm not going to misuse the name of God because I'm never going to say it. That's how far I will be from it. If you're married and you're spending time with someone maybe alone of the opposite sex and you feel this affection coming, there's a problem there. There should be some boundaries. We face the consequences when we breach a boundary. And here's the consequences: divorce, addictive behavior, undisciplined children, anxiety, heartache, all because we breached the boundary. I have a good friend of mine. His name is Doug Malmberg. He used to live here and be a part of this community. Now he's in the Panhandle. Doug was retired as a UPS pilot. Flew internationally, Malaysia, Thailand, big jets. But he was telling me when he was in the Navy, it's what's called a Navy flyboy. Those who've been in the Navy, you understand he was done very well. He was, flew these fighters and all those things, and he was a teacher at the base and up in North Florida. And his commanding officer was his good buddy because those guys are really high in the command structure. But here's the commanding officer and here's Doug. Well, he said one night we went down and we'd have a few beers and we were playing pool. And he said, man, he just was off his game and I just started beating him in pool and he just couldn't win at all. And the more frustrated he got, the worse he got. And the more sarcastic I got, the better I got. And the more beers I drank, the more obnoxious I got. And I was just talking smack to him. He said, I just took it to him. That's what friends do. And I was taking advantage. He said, before daylight, there was a knock on my door. I went to the door and said, what's up? He said, you Malmberg? Yeah, MPs. Get your duffel bag. You've been assigned new orders. He said, what do you mean? He said, get your duffel bag. No explanation. Guy's duffel bag, they put him on a plane. They flew him from the Panhandle to Iceland. He said, I remember getting off the plane at the runway in Iceland, and there's no lights, there's no one there. And they said, get out. He said, it's cold out there. Here's a jacket. They gave him a jacket. He said, I'm sitting out there in the snow on the runway in the night in Iceland. He said, within a couple minutes, I saw headlights, and a Jeep picked me up. You Malmberg? Yes, get in. So I got in the Jeep. They drove me over, and I got on a submarine. He said, I spent the next 30 days in a submarine. And I'm a fighter pilot, a trainer. I'm a plane guy. He said, after the 30 days, they reassigned me back to the base. He said, I walked in, my CO was there with his hands in his pockets. He goes, I get it. You breach a boundary. It has consequences. You want to talk smack to somebody that's on your level. Do not do that to your wife. It's difficult. Some of us need to quit climbing fences because the fences are there for us, while others of us need to build fences because there's no fence at all to keep us from the edge, from danger. Boundaries are an important part of your life. I could talk a whole series on boundaries, but I won't today. Let me give you the second thing. The second thing is the voice of declaration. This is a megaphone.
Test 1, 2.
Got that? Speak up. My voice is my ability to speak, and it often gives me the opportunity to speak from my heart. Some people need to speak up. When you see an injustice happening, when you see something that's absolutely inappropriate or incorrect or wrong, it's time to speak up. Some people need to speak up. They don't speak enough. Speak up. Be bold. There are other people that need to speak with more caution. I mean, you just need to guard your words and say them more clearly. And there's some of you that just need to speak less. We know who we are, don't we? I put myself in that category. But we need to begin to speak cautiously, speak wholesome truth. My voice represents me. Sometimes I could do better at communicating, but I should not let others speak for me. No one is an expert on me but me. When I speak, my voice is important that I do not speak against others, but I speak according to what's in me. There are a variety of opinions. We all have different opinions. Our voice should be used to convey our feelings and our preferences in a nice way. For example, a few months ago, most of you know I had a rotator cuff surgery, and one of the consequences of that was when I'd go to a restaurant, I could not sit in a booth. Something about the flat booth, it was something about my shoulder blades, it just did not work well for me. And I would go in and I'd say, sometimes I go to the restaurant, I go to the restroom, wash my hands, come back, and they're already in the booth. I said, I'm so sorry. Is it possible that we could sit at a table? And they, oh, sure. And they move you over. It's no problem. But I've seen people that just get really nasty about that. You know, restaurants are a place when people are hungry. The best you doesn't come out. After the meal, we walk out, we feel all good. But going in, we're just kind of, a little tense. But it's better to speak with clarity and kindness to people who are working for you, or people you feel like, well, I'm paying them now, so I can treat them badly. Not true. Inappropriate. This week, I talked to someone at the Ellington Outlet Mall at the Columbia Sportswear. I was thinking about getting a jacket. I heard Columbia's good, so I called around and finally got the guy at the Columbia Ellington Outlet. Says, is there anything closer? I live on Clark Road. Is there anything closer to me than you in Ellington? He goes, nope. You can go to Fort Myers. You can go to Orlando. You can come here. I said, okay. Thank you. He says, well, look, if you're going to come here, and let me say this first. I'm the kind of guy when I ask a question, I like yes or no answers. Some people call me the king of brevity. When you text me a long paragraph, I text you back the letter K. I just, now with voice text, I'm getting a little bolder, but I just don't respond. And I really am asking yes or no. Yes or no. So I asked the guy, what are your hours? He told me the hours. And he said, well, wait a minute. If you're coming from Clark Road, and he began to give me a whole dissertation about the interstate system in Sarasota, how that since University Parkway has been redone, that the traffic's here, I need to make sure I travel between this hour and this hour and this hour and this hour. And I'm just sitting there listening to this, and I got him on speakerphone like this. And I just sat there and listened and listened and listened and listened. And finally I said, thank you very much. Goodbye. I looked over at my wife. She said, you're a good boy. Because I've not always been that way. Sometimes I just go, hey, I ask you a question, how about the answer? Or just hit the off button. I do that too. And I just, okay, I got my information. But, my voice, though, tempered with grace, will keep me from living in frustration. Also helps my marriage. Our voice matters. Let's be careful when we speak. Let's speak clearly. Let's speak appropriately. Which leads me to the number 3 thing of the whole thing. This is called the yes-no medallion. There are 2 words necessary for personal freedom. Both words are necessary. Yes and no. Many of us feel guilty saying no. Especially true for a parent of the first child. The first child, oh, yeah. By the third child, no is not a problem. First child, yes. Third child, no. I was number 6. We didn't even ask questions. There was no yes or no. It was just, hey, you lose one, it's no big deal. It's nearly impossible for a grandparent to say this word. We much prefer this word. But you know, Jesus said no many times in the Bible. He said no to his disciples when healing the boy that they found him praying. No to his disciples when the healing line was so long. The disciples found him and said, Jesus, come back to the line. People are waiting around the block. It's in Mark chapter 2. He said, no, that's not the reason I've come. Let's go to another village. He said no to the crowd when they wanted to make him king. He said no to Peter when Peter suggested Jesus avoid the cross. He said no to the religious leaders who wanted him to stop saying he was the Messiah. He also said no to the religious leaders when he was coming into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, and they said, quiet your disciples. He said, no. No is an okay word, but it should not be the only word you know. As a church grows larger, I talked to someone earlier, it's from a small church. I used to pastor a small church. And you know what I said? Yes, I can be at the hospital. Yes, I can do the wedding. Yes, I can set up an appointment for you to come and counsel me. But as this church has grown larger, and there's about 2,000 people now that consider Suncoast their home, one of the things as the church grows larger, we have to delegate. And I have to learn to say, no, I can't do every wedding. No, I can't meet you for counseling every time. No, I can't do all these things because my time is so consumed. I have said yes so many times to so many things that it almost burns you out. And for personal health reasons, you have to learn to say no. Saying yes to everything we want is not healthy. But saying no to everything is not healthy either. Some people have a natural tendency, no matter what they're asked, yes. And there's a problem. Some people have a tendency, no matter what they're asked, to say no, and there's a problem. Should be some contemplation there somewhere. A healthy yes is a wonderful thing. When we can say yes, yes, I can meet with you. Well, Pop, can we go to Busch Gardens? My grandchildren would ask, say, yes, of course we can. Pop, can we go to Chick-fil-A? Of course we can go to Chick-fil-A, yes. My kids, my adult children say, Dad, can you watch our kids? Yes. Can we go to the movies? Yes. Honey, you want to go to the mall? No. It's about my rotator cuff surgery. My doctor actually said to me, he says, you cannot do dishes or go to the mall for 10 years. No, that's not true. But it's amazing. The yes-no medallion. Learn to say yes at the appropriate time and no at the appropriate time, which leads us to the next one, which is the heart of feelings. Pay attention to feelings. A large heart reminds us there are indicators inside to display our inner health. I need to pay attention to my feelings. My life is more than the absence of negative. There can be positive. This week in men's group, I asked the guys, how's it going? And we go around the group, and it's my favorite group. It's one of my favorite times of the week, and I love these guys. And because I was working on this teaching, one of the guys said, I have nothing to complain about. And I began to realize that sometimes that's our answer. How's it going? Well, I have nothing to complain about. In other words, since I don't have anything negative, I have nothing to say, right? And I challenged the guy, well, how can you say that in a positive way? How's it going? Life is great. It is great. When I was a boy, I was raised in a family with 9 kids. We didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have toys or possessions. We lived in a very poor house, very small house, 2 bedrooms. We were dirt poor. I didn't realize it. I was so naive, I was happy. I grew up in a loving home where I was happy despite the fact we didn't have all the stuff that others may have had. I've been to the mission field many times. I see kids playing without any material possessions and they're happy. And I come back to the States and I see kids are not very happy because, they're grounded from their electronics for a day or whatever. Here's what I want you to say. Do not let the lack of stuff, keep your heart from singing. I think that's important. What gives you joy? What makes you smile? What makes your heart sing? Those are important things. Following Jesus has changed my heart. I want to live in such a way that my heart continues to sing. Now let's go to the oxygen mask. You get on the airplane. First thing you need to do, if you see these drop from the ceiling, put it on yourself first and then put it on your kids. You cannot give to someone else what you don't have in the area of faith and walk. The reason the pilot says that on the plane, because if you put it on your kids first and the oxygen goes, the kids are not going to be able to put it on you. So you take care of yourself, then you can provide for many others. Self-care is an important thing. Yes and no helps you to say that. Most of the times, we need to take care of ourselves. Before we can pass our faith on to our children, we need to make sure that we have it ourselves. It's a game changer. If we all did this, if we were to work on our lives when tempted to complain about others, we'd become so improved it could change the world. If every time I think you need to be fixed, I just simply turned that around and said, okay, God, what in me needs to be fixed? I'd become a much better version of myself. Take care of yourself. The next one is the mirror of self-confrontation. Woo! I'm glad it's not one of those magnifying mirrors. The mirror simply says, I will not ignore what I see. If I see my shortcomings, I can work on my shortcomings. We begin to take personal responsibility when we look in the mirror. We don't blame our parents, our education, our poverty, or our situation. It's about me. I will take responsibility for all of me. As Jordan Peterson says, clean up your own house and get your own life in order. You do that when you look in the mirror. That I can attempt, which leads to number 7, which is the key of hope. What this says is, I will look for the positive. Living without hope is like driving your car looking in the rearview mirror all the time. You need to see the future. Look for the future. Well, no matter what doors are closed today, the key of hope is simply to say, this is who I want to be or could be, and I hope that can happen. Dream of a better future. That is hope, which leads to number 8, the hat of wisdom. It'd be wise not to wear this hat. I'm glad the mirror's not here. Where the hat of wisdom says, think. You have a brain, use it. It's not someone else. I mean, the best version of me is not someone that looks like me, but it's not me. The best version of me is not someone else. It's not me winning the lottery. It's not me being something else. The better version of me is a kinder, more compassionate me. It's okay to ask questions. We need to evaluate, calculate. But don't lose your brain. Think it through. In golf, it said that one bad shot leads to another. One bad life decision often leads to others. Think, dream, hope, then act. And when we blow it, admit it. Say you're sorry, ask for forgiveness, and focus again. The last item is the badge. This is the badge of courage. The badge of courage simply says, I will try to apply these other 8 things into my life. I will honor what Christ has taught me. I will trust what God wants for me. I'll stop comparing myself with others. I'll quit saying, what about him? And I'll let God begin to work on me. Quit deflecting and blaming. Let's open our hearts to God. Can I pray for you? Father, in moments like this, we're challenged to be more than what we are. We ask that you'd open our hearts to more of the teachings of Jesus, that we would apply it to our lives, that we'd become a better person because of the love of God so filling us and improving us. May it happen today, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. Would you stand, please? I'm going to tell you a story in closing. As I do remind you, if you want to pray, there's someone up front who'd be delighted to pray with you. Several years ago, Becky's mom and dad and Becky and I rented a motorhome, a 28-foot motorhome. We drove from Fort Myers all the way up the East Coast. Up the East Coast, we rented a motorhome. The deal was, Larry, you drive and I'll pay. So my father-in-law made that deal, and so he drove, and I drove 99% of the way. We drove through Washington, D.C. in a motorhome. You ever been to the mall in Washington, D.C. in a motorhome? Not a good idea. 2 days later, we decided to go to New York. We drove into New York, not just into New York, into Manhattan, not just into Manhattan. I drove a 28-foot motorhome right down the middle of Times Square. Can you imagine? I was so nervous. Why did I do that? First of all, I didn't know better. Secondly, I'd never been to Times Square. Thirdly, I was pretty stupid. It did not make my heart sing. We made it, but I'll never do that again. So my question is, how many of you found yourself in that kind of situation? You feel like you just got in a circumstance you never want to be in again. Can I make a suggestion? Think about where you're going in life. Listen to others who've already been there. No matter where you land, keep a good attitude, keep your mind open, and let your heart sing. because God loves you, and so do I. Thanks for coming today.
When the night is closing in and all that I see is gone, you're the one who holds the light in the dark.